Well, happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday. Here we are again. And I understand from my co-host, Mr. Ramin Modiri, this is show number 17. Whoa, where did those 17 hours go? I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, and you're listening and viewing the Dr. Laurie Davis Show, streaming live right now on E360 TV, also on our YouTube channel, Laurie Davis Show Host, and our Facebook page, Self-Worth the Missing Link Superstars. So tune in. I never know what Ramin has up his sleeve, but I always can count on him being well prepared. So welcome to the show again this week, Ramin. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be back. It's already December. Can you believe it? So here we are.
No. And this week I did a show on 10 ways to get the stress down.
Good.
For the holiday season. And one of them was no bother spending money that you don't have. That was one of my tips. 2 years in a row, I shopped around my house. I went around and I found beautiful things that I knew people would love to have and wrapped them up and recycled them. There you go. I've got enough stuff. We could do Christmas 10 years in a row.
That is, such an excellent lead to our subject we're going to talk about today. Can you believe it?
Really?
The wisdom. That's what you just used, and that's what we're going to talk about. Wisdom and some of the best advice that I've received regarding investing, but also life, trading, but which are really investing, sports. They're all subcategory of life. So you just hit one on the nail, and I'm so glad you started with that. Awesome.
Well, thank you. And it was beautiful. And you know what? It saved me money, and the, kids and everybody got things that they treasured from here. And I thought, yeah. And let me see, was it 3 years ago when I sent my Christmas cards out, I had emptied 2 or 3 big boxes of photographs. The old snaps we used to take that we developed. And of course, being the oldest in my family, grandchild, etc., I had taken pictures of all my cousins when they were little and birthday parties and all this kind of stuff. And they all got cards with pictures from the past. And they just loved it. It was like I gave them $1 million.
I agree. Awesome.
So over to you, because you have somebody special you want to introduce us to today that we may not know who that person was or is. And I'm looking forward to that story. So over to you, Ramin.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, last week we lost really one of the people in investment world that I looked up to, and that was Charlie Munger. And for our audience who don't know who Charlie is, Charlie was Warren Buffett's partner. A lot of people know Warren Buffett as the greatest investor in our generation, and everybody talks about him. But it was really Charlie Munger and his partnership which brought the success of Berkshire Hathaway and the company. So they were great complements. So Charlie passed away at age 99 last week. And, his birthday was supposed to be January 1st, 2024. He would have been centenarian. He would have been 100. And then our CNBC Business Network had already put in a special together for celebration of his 100th birthday. So now it will be a celebration because he had so many words of wisdom, and all of the things he had said, and I've tried to apply in my life, is we emphasize so much on information. We emphasize so much on trivia knowledge because of, again, now with the social media, of course, now we have AI, artificial intelligence, and access to so much out there. It makes us think very smart, but the decisions that we make comes from our experiences, comes from others' experiences. It comes from really common sense things. And it's we who make the life really complicated. And Charlie was a master of that. And if you ever have a chance to watch the annual Berkshire Hathaway meetings, it's a must. They started in the 1980s. These two would go at it, sometimes for 8 hours, and they would be hilarious and funny. And they would talk about, again, about life. Although here is, talking about one of the largest funds out there, the managing investments that they're doing, but yet they talk about life. So Charlie joined Warren Buffett in 1959. So it's a long time. And
Wow.
Charlie actually went to law school without having a bachelor degree. He went to Harvard. So he was a brilliant man. But what I'm going to share with you is some of his success stories, some of his advice, which I think it applies for generations. And it is not, you don't have to be old, young, but I'm hoping our younger audience will pay even more attention to what he has to say. And basically, again, it's all about common sense. So that's what I thought might be timely. New Year is coming, and obviously everybody wants to have a New Year resolution. So I want to share the things that he has shared, but also I have some other uh, investors and traders that I've followed, and I really respect them. So I'll share some of that if the time allows. So
Okay.
basically, let me start with one of the things that I really see in investment world, and he put the nail on the head. And he says there is nothing more counterproductive than envy. Now, envy
Oh,
is like a poison. Envy, in our investment world, it's the greedy thing. We think, oh, it's really the poisonous thing is envy. So he says, someone in the world will always be better than you. Of all the sins, envy is easily the worst because you can't even have any fun with it. It's a total net loss. And there's so much truth in that. I know miserable billionaires walking around. Think about that. Successful actors, athletes, and yet they're still miserable. If you want to see misery, I have a friend who's part of well, not a friend, but I mean people that I've known. They're part of the Housewives of Orange County, for instance.
okay.
So any part of these housewives, you think, they're all, they're wealthy. Man, when you listen to their stories, you say, oh my God, I'm glad I'm not in their shoes. I'm happy with my life. So basically, I thought this is, again, from 7-year-old to 100-year-old, this is such a good advice. So um, I'm gonna, one of the things I wanted to narrow his 10 rules for success, and then we'll go to more quotes from him. So Charlie says, number one, and he was a big advocate of this, always keep learning. Learning, learning, learning. And Warren Buffett is big. I mean, he starts his morning by reading. I mean, for 2 hours. They were advocate. Imagine being the most successful investors in the history and being 99 years old or 92 years old and still having that drive to learn. And that's what life is, I think, because the minute that we stop learning and we don't have any goals or passion, you're dead. So that was number one rule. Number two, and this is another one, we will talk a little more about this, is he says, deserve what you want. We
Oh,
always have the opposite. You're always asking, and so I will go in more details about that. Three, he says, know the edge of your competency. If you're, know how competent you are, know that edge. So it comes to your area of knowledge and expertise, Dr. Laurie. And, number four, be a survivor.
phew.
Such a important, I mean, again, especially when we talk, it's not just about investing. Investing, as I mentioned, the sports are just subcategory of life, and that's what I love these. But be a survivor in life. Number five, practice the right approach. Number six, understand what you are doing. Yeah, these are such a simple ideas. That's why I said it's about common sense, but I think they're so deep. Number seven, invest in trust.
Ooh,
And he was very
wow.
big advocate of that, and especially again in the investment world when we and trading. Number eight, know all the big ideas. So, and we'll touch on that. Number nine, swim as competently as you can. and it goes back to the survive. But he was big on, again with the swimming, you got to really give your best and as competent as you can. And number 10, this is another important. It happens as a trader and then as an investor, but also in life. And the idea is don't submerge into self pity. And again, very simple. Here it comes from a man of many experience, and I thought that were really simple rules, but I think everyone should abide by that. And it's not just in investing, but in life. All right, so we'll go back to some other advices that he has. He says, "In my whole life, I have known no wise people," and over a broad subject matter area, he says, "who didn't read all the time." He was a big advocate of reading, and he continues. He goes, "None, zero. You'd be amazed at how much Warren Buffett reads all the time, and at how much I read. My children laugh at me. They think I am a book with a couple of legs sticking out." And the studies done, Laurie,
Mhm,
households that the kids actually children did read, is they found if the parents had books, they had libraries, kids had a habit of
mhm,
being a reader. So
mhm,
as a parent, as a grandparent, that visual, knowing that the respect. Again, nowadays with everything with technology, we all look for the shortcut. So I've
mhm,
said it before, we have a very shallow understanding of a lot of things, but not depth. And reading, when he talks about reading, he's not talking about just like about investments. And he was a big advocate on philosophy, on history, literature, arts. So we got to have a wide range of really different knowledge, and we learn a lot. Again, I'm a big advocate of again like history and philosophy, and I think I learn a lot more from that than actually reading investment books sometimes. So the other idea is, he says, I got at a very early age the idea that the safest way to try and get what you want is to try and deserve what you want. And what he means is, it's such a simple idea. It's the golden rule, so to speak. So you want to deliver to the world what you would buy if you were on the other end. And it is such a, again, important fact that, again, especially our youth, sometimes they overlook that. So would I buy what I'm offering? And that's what we've talked about, that's what he's suggesting. We've many times, and I think your quote is like, universe delivers as long as it knows you're deserving. It goes back to the quote that you, so that's what he suggests. And I truly believe in that also. Um, this is also important because sometimes, again, arrogance takes a control of our life. He says, knowing what you don't know is more useful than being brilliant.
Can you say that again, please?
Yes. Knowing what you don't know is more useful than being brilliant.
Exactly.
And again, when I just reviewing with you, and I can think of some of my students that the class,
Mhm.
I tell them, probably half the class has higher IQ and more brilliant than I am. But the question, the wisdom is knowing again what we don't know and search for that, and thinking that we know everything in,
Mhm.
in our little um, box. How are we doing so far? Do you
Well,
is
we're
that
doing great, and I wrote them all down as you were talking. And I would be all excited about the deserving one because I just had this conversation this morning. In 2003, when the movie The Secret came out and the law of attraction and all of
yeah?
that, and when I watched the movie, of course, I was already knee deep in my business, and I thought, wow, they forgot the most important part. And the part that they left out was the deserving. The universe is not going to deliver something to us that we don't think we deserve. And I saw that as a huge flaw in the movie. Another thing that came up for me while you were talking, I forget who said this, but where you'll be 5 years from now will depend on two things: the people in your life and the books you read.
Mhm. Excellent. Yes.
So over to you. Those are two things that
Excellent.
was
Yeah.
coming up for me as you were talking.
No. No. So we're going to talk a little bit about the business side and investment side. One of his, again, advices is a great business at a fair price is superior to a fair business at a great price. So he's the one, actually, we've heard Warren Buffett. He's the one who talked to Warren Buffett. And what that means is sometimes we find these bargains and we think, oh my God, this is such a great value. Well, there's a reason it's a great value. So there must be something in the market that they see in this to be that low. So he's suggesting always look for the business, not the price. So basically, it's better to find this the superior business at a great price. So it is very important at a fair price. I mean, so I think that's very simple, but it's very difficult because our human mind, we always look again for the discounts, and we want to look for, we always think because something is cheap is going to go up, but the valuation, he puts emphasis on that. And it says it's waiting that helps you as an investor. And a lot of people just can't stand to wait. Talks about patience. If you didn't get the deferred, and this is, I emphasize this with my kids, and I think any generation, we've talked about in the past, if you didn't get the deferred gratification gene, you've got to work very hard to overcome that. And this delayed gratification applies in all the aspects of our lives. Again, in my world, in the trading and investing, it's poisonous because we have this fear. Oh, I'm gonna miss out. Oh, if I could have done this, why the regret I didn't do it. Next time I'm gonna do it.
Right.
Unfortunately, it happens in addictions. Obviously, it's like
Mm.
in we like to have our dessert first and then have the
Mhm.
nutritions. And so I think it's such a important thing. So that's what applies in business, but also life. The next one, I think, is, I mean, these are simple codes, but they're great codes. So he says, if you think your IQ is 160, but it's actually 150, you're a disaster. It's much better to have a 130 IQ and think it is 120. And this comes from, again, the arrogance and how the overconfidence. So a lot of people, so the idea is, I think I am smarter than I actually am. So it's better, we talk about uh, uh, under promise and over deliver.
Mhm.
This happens in our lives too. So I do know people, and they're the ones who talk all the time. You go to these parties, they'll talk about their success. So it goes back to humility. It goes about humbleness and gratitude. So again, I read this. If you think your IQ is 160, but it's 150, you're a disaster. It's much better to have a 130 IQ and think it's 120. So and
I have a story about that because I was a
great.
school teacher,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And I never made anything above a 75 in junior high, high school. I just couldn't get past that because I had overheard the family saying that I wasn't the smart one in the family.
Mhm.
My sister was a lot smarter. And then I had people say, well, she's not university material, but my sister is,
Yeah.
because we went to the same schools.
Right.
And who ended up going to university and who didn't? Right?
Right.
And when you're talking about IQs, there was actually just a brief story because it fits. But there was, and this was a true story. There was a small group of students in Detroit, Michigan, who were extremely, leaning towards the life of crime and didn't do well at all. And they were really causing a lot of problems at the high school where they attended. And there had been a teacher the year before who had retired, and Mrs. Smith. And they said, "Oh man, I wish she was here because she'd know how to handle those kids." So they called her up to see if she would come back, and they promised to put a police officer in the back of the room, keep her safe. And she said, "Well, I'll come back and do the year, but I don't want any police officer at the back of the room." So that was fine. She started working with them, and by the end of the year, these kids were all on the honor roll. They had given up their lives of crime. She was their new mom, whatever, whatever. So they had a special dinner for her, and the students were there. And the principal of the school wanted to present her with this plaque, and he said, "I don't know how you did it. I just don't know how you did it." Well, she said, "Look at the IQ, 132, 128, 135. I mean, really, guys, these kids had the potential. We just need to tap into that potential." And he said, "Oh, Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry." She said, "What?" He said, "Those weren't their IQ numbers, those were their locker numbers." So you see, and that's a true story.
Yes.
So you're right. It's a disaster. I'd rather just be kind of, the 120. I think mine's around one something now, but it was 120 all the time I was in school, though. But, you know, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, it's good to have, intelligence and obviously, but it takes a lot of other things to become successful. But that's why I want to devote our, again, this show is more about common sense things, our experience. We learn from our past generations, that
Mhm.
storytelling. We also learn from our own experiences. So that's what, as long as we learn, and that's the big important factor we have to take into consideration. So, the other talking about investing, he says you're looking for a mispriced gamble. He looks at the investing, but what it comes in investing is that's what investing is, and you have to know enough to know whether the gamble is mispriced, and if that is, then that's value investing. Now you find a fair price for that. So, and there's a lot of talk. I know we've done our classes in the past, and I've always questioned uh, about knowing yourself. Are you an investor? Are you a trader? Or are you a gambler? With gambling, the outcome is always 50-50, and it's usually not in your favor because you don't really have an edge. With investing or trading, you do have an edge because it's about uncertainty, but you can manage your risk, but knowing that what the edge is. So that's the difference. So people say, oh, stock trading is a gamble. Well, sometimes because they're beyond your control, but you do have, and Charlie Munger and obviously Warren Buffett are good examples of that. So what I like to do, I like to now move on from Charlie and go to Warren, his partner. And I'm sure, he's taken it hard, but they were expecting this. They've had a succession plan at Berkshire Hathaway for a while because Warren's in 90s now. So basically, but Warren has full of wisdom, and as I said, they were such a great partnership. So I'm going to give you just some of the highlights of Warren Buffett's uh, uh, quotes and wisdom. So when it comes to on earnings and income, he says, never depend on a single income. Make investments to create a second source. So, and we will talk about this, and I talked about human capital versus financial capital. We work, that's our human capital, like a labor or our expertise. But you want to have both. You work for the money, And eventually you want money work for you. So we want to have the best of it. And we want to squeeze that time as close to each other as possible rather than extending like 60, 70 years down the road. On spending, if you buy things that you do not need, soon you will have to sell things that you need. And it's
Oh,
such a great,
wow. Yeah.
that's, we've talked about this in the past also. I just mentioned the housewives of whatever, Orange County or Atlanta. It's such a basic common sense things, but it's so true, right? It happens.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, the introduction of the credit cards, and now we have all these different programs that they allow you to stretch your payment 6 months, 12 months that the students are using. It's not credit cards, it's just give you the credit, you make it. And that makes it very convenient to push the can down the road. Well, I will make that money in the future, so I'll pay for it. But this is, I think, again, especially for our younger people, it's such an important code. On savings, do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. And I think they go hand in hand. And that's uh, easier said than done. And that's why it's good to have a disciplined and systematic savings plan. On taking risk, never test the depth of river with both the feet.
What was that again?
Never test the depth of river with both feet. So
Okay.
put one foot in first,
Yeah.
see how deep it is. Don't jump in the river to see how deep it's going to be. So it's testing risk. So if I'm like in trading, we like to walk in gradually. So the same thing in the river, just put your foot in, see how deep it is. So always have the other foot on the ground as a safety. So he says,
Okay.
don't test it with both feet. That's the dump. You can jump in because it could be so deep you can drown.
I
So
never get out, right?
yeah, never get out. So the same thing in investments. On investments, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And although a lot of his success comes from the few great ideas, by the way, he didn't have like a
Mhm.
thousand different things, right? He was concentrated. Um, on expectation, he says honesty is a very expensive gift. Do not expect it from the cheap people. And that's such a, I think, again, um, talking about honesty. So it's knowing who you're dealing with. So honesty is a very expensive gift. So do not expect it from cheap people. So
Got it.
that's what his expectation is. All right, let me see how we're doing time wise. I got some more from my other hero. My hero was, and as you know, my background is in international investing, international finance. The time that I started in the 1980s, not many people in the United States were doing it. But the father of global investing was Sir John Templeton. And he started in 19, well, he started investing in 1930s in the Great Depression. He borrowed money, $10,000 from all the family members, and all the stocks are going down. And he went and bought 100 uh, shares, I mean 100 stocks, and each $100 of investment in each. Many of them went, bankrupt, and but the ones who made it, they went up tenfolds, hundredfolds, some of them. So he was the one who actually one of the first people who invested in Japan after World War II. I mean, who would think? Here's Japan completely devastated, and he had the faith. So he was a great mind, but also a great person. He was he was religious. He was a devoted, I think, Southern Methodist or but he valued science. So he foundation. He put hundreds of millions of dollars in this foundation to show the relationship between science and religion. And um, he was American, but also the British. He lived in Bahamas, and I also I talked to him. I was gonna go visit him in Bahamas. That would have been my highlight of my life. Unfortunately, I didn't. I worked with someone who managed a part of his personal investments. Actually, we met, and great humble man, and he was given a title of Sir by Queen Elizabeth. So these are some of his quotes. So these are about investing, and I think they apply in any generation. Bull markets are born on pessimism, grown on skepticism, mature on optimism, and die on euphoria. And every bubble we go back, and again, it's about human emotions, human psychology. It is these things keep repeating. And I think you've seen, I've had one graph, it shows the emotional roller coaster. And everybody is like thinking that this cannot be, it cannot even, this is the greatest moment, and that's the euphoria, and things fall apart. He says that time of maximum pessimism is the best time to buy, and the time of maximum optimism is the best time to sell. So it's the contrarian human biases and human psychology. Other thing, he was very devoted, again, religious, but a human actually. He says, an attitude of gratitude creates blessings. And I truly believe in that. And it goes back again about deserving, about the value put out there. Another quote he has is, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Oh, wow.
Perhaps you have heard these before, but that's the source of it. So I just want
Hmm.
to, but it is also so important. And I truly believe in that. Um, the commitment of giving your best at all times, in all circumstances, under all conditions, can enable you to find value in and lend value to every experience. And again, this is important for, again, younger generations, but also us. I mean, life goes on. Who knows, how many more years we have. We always want to give our really best whatever we do, and I think that's a valuable lesson. um, so I'm gonna finish with someone else that I've respected. He was Peter Lynch, in late 1970s and especially in 1980s. He was the greatest mutual fund manager. There was Fidelity's Magellan Fund, and he did amazing. That was the largest fund in the world. So I think we should pay attention to what he has to say. And he's written a couple of really good books. For it's part of any of my students. I ask him, if you want to go to investing and understand investments, his book is a really good book, One Up on Wall Street. So he says the most important organ in the body, as far as the stock market is concerned, is the guts, not the head. Anyone can acquire the know-how, the know-how for analyzing stocks. And it goes back again, the technology, it goes back to our IQ. But our intestines have the second most nerves. And when we say gut feeling, there's a reason, because when we experience things, they have memories. So it's not just about brain and logic. So there's a lot of truth when you say, and you've met like experiences, meeting people sometimes, and you get this gut feeling because it's these past experiences have been in the memory, and they are in the intestines. And whether good or bad, sometimes, at nights, I know I have some thoughts, and then I wake up, it's like it could be good feeling or bad feeling, and we call it intuition, but it is true, it's scientific. So he believes in that. So I thought that was interesting to share. The other thing he says is, owning stocks is like having children. Don't get involved with more than you can handle. So
I love that.
so, oh god, especially if you have teenagers. But anyway, so
Right. Right.
that's I thought that was interesting. The other what the hero is this. He was the greatest trader of all times, and that was Jesse Livermore. And we've discussed Jesse in the past, but he has some of the again really definitive and important codes that he's used because he became the richest trader in the history, and then he lost it all three times, and he ended up committing suicide. So here we are talking about misery
Wow.
and envy, and life is not just about money. So one of the quotes he says is that stock market is never obvious. It is designed to fool most of the people most of the time. So that's why we talk about the edge, and knowing what we should do. There's only one side to the stock market, and it's not the bull side or the bear side, but the right side. So that's why we cannot marry our positions all the time. There's a time to go long. That means buying. There's a time to go short. That means betting things are going to go down. And there is a time to go fishing. And that's what people miss. That we talk about waiting. That is such an important, especially in trading. We are always are tempted because we want to be involved. We want to keep investing in, and that's important to go fishing and just relax. It's not your time to do. So instead of hoping, the investor must fear, and instead of fearing, he must hope. He must fear that the loss may develop into much bigger loss, and hope that his profit may become a big profit. Unfortunately, we do the opposite. When there's a loss, we are living in a hope that things come back. And when we have things gaining, we have a fear that, oh, I'm going to lose it. So I think this is uh, important, again, lesson. Um, the other things that Jesse has said that the human side of every person is the greatest enemy of the average investor or speculator. And what he mean by that, and we've talked about that, those the human, the psychology, the emotions, the biases. So, they play such a big role, especially again when we are trading, because in trading you are really competing against yourself. It's the market and you. You don't have a boss that you're going to give you a paycheck. It's not nobody's watching you. So a lot happens in your head. And I know would be maybe in the future we'll do something about talking to yourself. When like I have a lot of stories about talking to yourself when you're trading because you have so much time in front of the computer. There's nobody to talk to. You go crazy. But it is important that self-talk. And the other thing is he says, the big movements take time. We are very impatient to looking for these shortcuts and you get these big home runs. No, you have to be patient again and wait for uh, uh, the right moments. So in a nutshell, that's what I put together. I thought we'll share some of the words of wisdom of these great investors, and really it's the application of that in our lives that makes us the totality. There's a lot of again, Charlie Munger has talked about that, and that's the reason we talked about avid reader, and he thought you have to have a balanced life. And I mentioned art and music. You have to have appreciation of that. We are sometimes just focused on one thing, and that's what it made him very special. That I mentioned about reading completely different subjects, which they help each other. But for him, the balanced life was very important, and he applied it in his own life, but also balanced knowledge. So, you know, one of the other things he had said was there's so much emphasis in these days on specialty, and everybody narrows on one thing, and they lose the concept of life, what we are surrounded with. And that's what I think we've had shows on our traveling, and appreciating other cultures, traveling the world. And um, I know, like, my children seeing things, it has a big impact on them. understanding how other people live, and appreciation for their lives, but also our own lives. Some of the gratitude comes from that, obviously. So um, that's what I truly believe. Again, it's good to be very successful in one thing, and that's awesome. But not having a life, it's a lonely world. So yeah,
Well, a lot of people, for example, where I live in Alberta, Alberta has been very blessed as one of the wealthiest provinces in Canada. And people came from all parts of Canada to come here to work in the oil industry, agriculture. And people are very driven. And so they would make all this money and then buy all the toys and never have a chance to go anywhere with that boat or take that beautiful motorhome and put the kids in it and go away for a week. Like the toys sat around the yard, and that's pretty common here. It's pretty common. And then, of course, when we had the big bust in 2008, and then again during COVID, um, there weren't enough, believe it or not, during COVID. I have a friend, a former client, and he owns one of the largest RV lots companies in the province, and he could not keep them in
yeah,
because the sales went, because people couldn't go visit each other. And whoever thought this would be the time that somebody would put out money for a toy? But they did, because it enabled them to take their families and finally go away somewhere. But yeah, that balance, what's the point of having all the stuff if you don't get to enjoy it? And that's just exactly, I believe, what you're saying. So, yeah, wow. I'm just thinking about some things that and that's why I love doing our shows and having our conversations, because we always manage to trigger things to talk about that, are over and above perhaps the specific topic of the day.
right.
Because, this is a show about money, but we're now talking about balance in your life and having, as we know, in the Indigenous community, they try to work on their medicine wheel, which has 4 quadrants: mental health, emotional wellness, spirituality, and physical wellness. And if one of those is out of whack, we're not well. We're not well. And we become dysfunctional, which I'm writing a book about right now. Oh my gosh. It's really, really coming along
Excellent. Yeah.
because I put a deadline on it. But all of these things create dysfunctionality. And when we're dysfunctional, we're not productive. Like you said, who said? Charlie said, the envy. I love that. Who said that? Charlie, or
Yeah,
was that
Charlie
Norman?
Munger. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was his first. Yeah,
Envy. Envy. Oh my gosh, the energy that goes into that. And it's coming up now, even with the Christmas holiday. It's
yes,
built right into the kids. Who's going to get more gifts? Who's going to get bigger gifts? Who's going to get better gifts? And
yes.
then they're upset or envious or jealous. It starts really young.
It's. I might have shared the story when I was visiting home. I went back to Iran, and obviously I didn't want to drive, so I'm like these taxis, but a lot of time they, instead of Uber, they call them Snap. So you meet all kinds of background as far as the drivers go, and the interesting was with there's a big disparity between wealthy and poor, and inflation plays a huge role, and people are just making a living. That's what they were doing. Snap, they have 2 jobs. And he was telling me he has a 7-year-old daughter, and the 7-year-old daughter has to have this backpack, which is about $20, which is, that's how much probably makes in 2 or 3 days. I mean, for $20, they make like $250 a month, some of them. That's it. So the idea is doesn't matter what class you're in, as far as social class, how much money. Everybody has to have that. It's like a Barbie backpack, let's say. Every student, because everybody else has it. So it doesn't matter if the parent could afford it or not, they have to do it. And it's just because of so and so is having it. And the kid comes home and said, well, I didn't have it, they made fun of me, or, so
Yep.
that's how, unfortunately, that envy starts with the materialistic things, but also it starts with not just the possessions, but so and so has this relationship, so and so has this position. And I
Mhm.
truly believe in that. And I know, again, in a lot of movies we watch, it talks about greed, but I think envy is even more powerful than greed.
Is envy one of the seven deadly sins? Um, remember, I don't know if you remember, Morgan Freeman did a movie with, and they investigated people who had operated in one of the seven deadly sins. I must Google that and find out. Is envy one of them? I think it is, um, like obesity and slovenly and all that. They're all deadly sins. And yeah, I think envy is one of them
Yeah, things envy.
because people can be consumed by that.
Yes, yes,
And I know of situations where, in my own family, where the parents were jealous of the children,
yes. It's funny,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Success and yeah,
So, the husband could be jealous of the, son's relationship with the mom or the mom with the daughter. I mean, it's all within families it gets created, or
yeah,
they're jealous of the other partner and what they do. And gosh, that must be
yeah.
hard.
It's
Yeah.
poisonous, right? So,
Yeah. It's venom.
and,
Venom.
and that's what the reason I mentioned again. A lot of successful people do stupid things, and you
Right.
wonder why. And athletes do, and you say, "Well, my God, they're so successful. They have everything they want," and they sometimes they open their mouth and say something really crazy, or the action. And when you get the deep rooted, um, unfortunately, it happens in like the music industry. They do some of the thing, and that's, again, that's envy, because so and so can do this. I'm going to do this to show them, or I have these many followers. I'm going to do something outrageous to have more followers. It's just, there's nothing in perspective. So
Mhm.
anyway, but I
Mhm.
thought that was, these are simple things, but they are, um,
But they matter. They
very
matter.
much, yes. These are the common sense things, and that's why we lose the sight of it when we make decisions. And it happens in the investment world. It does. It just, because we want to believe what we want to believe rather than what
That's right.
reality is. So
That's right. We want to hang on to those narratives,
yes, we
right?
do.
That,
And
that
that's
we
what these
think are serving us.
that's what bubbles happen. People, when they, like in 2008, 2008, people were buying real estate one after another because so and so was doing it, doubling his or her money in this skyscraper in Las Vegas. Oh, they just made 200,000, 300. They doubled their money. Why not me? Why not me? So internet bubble, exact same thing. There was no fundamentals, and people like me, I suffered through that because I was, I was out of the markets by 2000 and then 1999. Majority of money, and people were saying, "Oh, how come you're not making 100%?" Well, because it doesn't make sense. And a lot of really good advisor or portfolio managers, they got fired because their companies sent them. They said, "Oh, so and so," and then yet they were laughing when 2000 happened, 2001 happened, because they didn't lose any money for their clients. So, but yeah,
Wow.
it's the human emotions. But yeah, this was a big one. So I hope it
Um,
was helpful. It was
oh
something
yeah.
different.
Another
And
one of Charlie's that just hung out for me, and I've circled it, and it happens to be number 7, which is my happy number. Um,
yeah,
that's my number. Investing in trust.
yeah,
And we all have very good reasons not to trust anybody. But when you do that, the gifts are so immense and
Yeah.
intense, right? If you're willing to take that risk, you might be willing to invest in other things, but when you invest in that, it's been my experience that that's where the greatest gifts come from,
Yeah.
the trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Well, we've got about 5 minutes, so let's brag on what it is we're doing and what we're working on. We have, I'm just going to put Ramin's contact info up to start with. If you'd like to get in touch with him, this is the best way to do that. Just give him an email. And if you want to contact me, you can use my email as well. We're always looking for fun people to have on the show, and we're going to rebrand our show in January. So look out for some exciting news around that. And of course, we're broadcasting live right now on E360 TV. And I just got my book cover finalized for my book, 100 Shades of Dysfunction. And we have a few books on the go. Ramin and I have a book on the go. So that's a goal to get that off the ground in 2024 as well. We want to write a book, Health and Wealth for the Next Generation. So that's still on my list. And the other thing is we have another recovery summit coming up in February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And our last one was extremely successful, and lots of great relationships have been built as a result of that. So we're going to do another one. And let's see, we have a financial program we're offering. We have a writer's retreat where it's coming up in January. We're busy, man. We're busy, busy, busy over and above the show. So there you have it. I could go on and on and on and on. Anything to say about that?
No, it's good to be busy. Number one, we are blessed to have the opportunity. And another thing Charlie Munger said is, one of the biggest responsibility we have is helping others to know more and to educate them. And that's what we are born. So that's another thing. He was such a giving person. So whether it's the next generation, it's our generation or the generation before us, it's our responsibility, because if our community grows, it helps us. Definitely, And I used to make fun of, I would be at the university when I was talking to my students, and I would say, I want you to be as successful as you could, because you're my future. You're going to pay my pension and retirement and all that. So the way the social security is, I'm not depending on it, but I'm just saying for our generations,
Yeah.
listen, you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to be a good person, because if you're not taking care of yourselves and your community, there won't be one for me. So we want them to be successful. We want our surroundings. They talked about envy. I would go the opposite. The success when it comes to investing. There's no reason not to have the whole family be wealthy, and it
That's
doesn't
right.
take anyone else. It doesn't take from me. The wealth comes from, again, it's a global wealth. It's universe. So it's nothing to do with me. If they're loving, they love their family. That's awesome. It
Mm-hmm.
helps us to be in a better situation. So that's why it's important to share our knowledge, to share our love, to share our experiences. And that's what's the most important thing, I think, for our surroundings. So that's what we are trying to hopefully do with our 100 Shades of Prosperity, to help our communities to become successful. And
That's right. And the famous motivational speaker Zig Ziglar once said, when you help enough other people get what they want, you will always get what you want.
yeah,
Right. And he was right about that.
true.
All right. Well, our time is up. Thank you so much,
Wow,
Ramin, for another beautiful Tuesday.
appreciate
And
it.
I look forward to our show next week and see what you have planned. And if you've been watching or listening, remember you can always go in and listen again or listen for the first time on E360 TV. We're streaming live right now on our Facebook page, Self Worth the Missing Link Superstars. and also on our YouTube channel. So you can catch us in a variety of ways and just go in there and have like a little Laurie Ramin fix. Okay. And when all else fails, please share the show because somebody that you know may need to hear something that we said today that has value for them. And we'd have no way of knowing that unless we share the information. So thank you for the reminder, Ramin, on that. And we'll see you tomorrow. I'm back on the air tomorrow, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye bye. Thank you.